The Great War was supposed to be the war to end all wars. Its end in 1918 left a continent scarred, its people broken, and its economies in ruin. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, was meant to secure a lasting peace. Instead, it sowed the seeds of a future, even more devastating conflict. For Germany, the turns were crushing. Immense financial reparations, severe military restrictions, and the loss of vast territories. The treaty was seen not as a peace settlement, but as a diktat, an imposed humiliation. This collective sense of injustice festered, creating fertile ground for resentment and radical ideologies. Across Europe, the Roaring Twenties gave way to the Great Depression of the 1930s. Global trade collapsed. In Germany, the economic crisis was catastrophic. Hyperinflation had already wiped out savings, and now mass unemployment gripped the nation. Millions were left jobless, hungry, and desperate. Images of people queuing for bread and soup became a daily reality. The democratic Weimar Republic, already fragile, proved incapable of solving the crisis. Its leaders seemed powerless as society fractured, and people lost faith in mainstream politics, turning instead to extremist voices who promised simple solutions to complex problems. It was in this climate of despair that Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party rose to power. Hitler was a charismatic orator who skillfully exploited the nation's anger and fears. He promised to restore Germany's greatness, tear up the Treaty of Versailles, rebuild the economy, and create a powerful, racially pure state. His message resonated with millions. The Nazi paramilitary wing, the SA, silenced opposition through intimidation and violence. By 1933, Hitler was appointed chancellor. Within months, democracy was dismantled. The Reichstag fire was used as a pretext to suspend civil liberties. Political opponents were arrested, books were burned, and a totalitarian regime was established, built on propaganda, terror, and a cult of personality. Meanwhile, a similar tide of aggressive nationalism was rising elsewhere. In Italy, Benito Mussolini's fascist regime dreamed of recreating a new Roman Empire, invading Ethiopia in 1935 in a brutal display of colonial ambition. The League of Nations, the international body created to prevent such conflicts, proved utterly toothless, imposing only weak sanctions that failed to deter Mussolini. Far away in Asia, the Empire of Japan was also on a path of expansion. Driven by a desire for resources and regional dominance, Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931, establishing a puppet state. This act of aggression was a clear violation of international law, yet the world's response was muted. Japan simply withdrew from the League of Nations and continued its conquest, escalating into a full-scale invasion of China in 1937. The Axis powers Germany, Italy, and Japan were forming, united by their militaristic, expansionist ambitions and their disdain for the existing world order. Emboldened by the world's inaction, Hitler began to test the limits of the Versailles Treaty. In 1936, he ordered German troops to reoccupy the Rhineland, a demilitarized zone. Britain and France, haunted by the memory of World War I and grappling with their own economic problems, did nothing. This policy became known as appeasement. European leaders, desperate to avoid another war, believed they could satisfy Hitler's demands. In 1938, Hitler annexed his native Austria in the Anschluss, again without a single shot being fired. The peak of appeasement came later that year at the Munich Conference. Hitler demanded the Sudetenland, a German-speaking region of Czechoslovakia. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain and French Premier Édouard Daladier met with Hitler and Mussolini and agreed to his demands, sacrificing Czechoslovakia in the hope of securing peace for our time. Chamberlain returned to London a hero, but the peace was an illusion. Winston Churchill grimly noted, "You were given the choice between war and dishonor. You chose dishonor, and you will have war." He was right. In March 1939, Hitler broke his promise and invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia. A policy of appeasement was shattered. It was now clear that Hitler's ambitions were limitless and that war was inevitable. While diplomats talked, the machines of war were being built at a furious pace. Germany's rearmament program, which had begun in secret years earlier, was now in full swing. Factories churned out tanks, planes, and submarines. The Wehrmacht grew into a formidable modern army, training relentlessly for a new kind of warfare. The Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War. Britain and France, finally awakening to the danger, began their own frantic rearmament efforts, but they were years behind. The world was transforming into an armed camp, teetering on the edge of a precipice. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place in August 1939. In a stunning diplomatic reversal, mortal enemies Nazi Germany and the Communist Soviet Union signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Publicly, it was a non-aggression treaty. Secretly, it contained a protocol to divide Poland and the rest of Eastern Europe between them. The pact removed the threat of a two-front war for Hitler, giving him the green light he needed to launch his invasion. The stage was set. On the dawn of September 1, 1939, under the false pretext of a Polish attack, German forces stormed across the border. Tanks rolled over the plains, and the Luftwaffe rained bombs down on Polish cities. 2 days later, Britain and France, honoring their guarantee to Poland, declared war on Germany. The unresolved wounds of the First War, fueled by years of economic desperation, radical ideology, and failed diplomacy, had finally erupted. The world was once again plunged into global conflict, a war that would become the deadliest and most destructive in all of human history. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more historical content.